And so we're here, and sorry about the cancel, but I've talked to several of the Republicans, and I said, you're forgiven. And so that's the first time we've ever canceled a meeting for this organization, and as I was mentioning to our guest speaker, we've been around for 24 years. That's a long time. I'll miss you guys. In case that you've not seen it, the $30 tab is added again. They're coming around, and every time we pass it, the people down in Olympia say no. And the best way that you can control those people is through the vote. So I want to pass this around and let you sign it. And there's any questions that you have, there's a newspaper part about it so that you can read it if you were unfamiliar with it. So let's start it here. One thing that I've noticed out on the tree farm is that the spring is coming early this year. Everything is warm and blossoms all over the red bud and the Cascadia, and the trees are beginning to get a little bud on them. The alder is turning red, and to me it's probably about a month early. And I don't know exactly why, but I'll tell you what, it's a welcome thing to have that done. And one of the things that we need to talk about is some of the problems that we mentioned earlier. Yeah, that is the spring and the summer, and sometimes you get out in the woods, and tourists get out there and they fall down and somebody has to rescue them. They get lost. Hunting season, everybody gets lost during the hunting season. Well, the good thing about that is all the old growth is all cut off, so you don't get lost. For those of you who have enjoyed hunting out on the west end and the old growth, you get into that, and the canopy above you, you're lost. If you don't know what direction you're going in, just follow a stream. But it seems like that most hunters don't seem to realize that. And I remember several times that we've been out looking for hunters and one of them was a death, as you remember, and you were a part of that search. And that's good because we've always been able to find them, pick them up, and get them back. So I think the granddaddy of everything that we are concerned with is the fact that we're right on a fault. And I mentioned this earlier in one of our meetings, but there's nothing like sitting on an earthquake fault, because we are also subject to a tsunami. And if these things occur, I'll tell you what, we're going to be in some pretty tight spots. For instance, it'll probably take 6 weeks before we can have communications over land. Of course, the air, they can come in, but you never know where it's going to be. And with that comes a tsunami. And I know that's hard for most people to pronounce, but it's Japanese. T-S-A-M is the way that it reads. And I know in Japan, I had the hardest time figuring out how to say it. It's just not in our language. But then we got even with them. They can't pronounce the B's. And so they replace it with an R. And the great sport was to get the Japanese entertainer to sing, I'm in love with you, they would say. Yeah, because they would always replace it with an R. But I don't know how we got onto that, but it's interesting. So let's talk about what would happen and how it's controlled. Most people don't really know how many hours are put into the search and rescue and into the emergency. But we have the guy here who runs it, and that's the UnderSheriff. And the guy that's responsible for it is the sheriff. But he's the lake man. He's the guy that's the duck sitting on the water, the feet are going miles an hour and everything up on top, not moving. So I think that's the best way to describe his job. And he's going to tell us all about it. And we would like for you to stay for our business meeting, which will take about 10 minutes. And we usually just have a few questions and comments. So you may have some interest there too. And following that, then we will go into the rest of our business meeting. So with that, Ron Zucker, of course, is the, as I said, is the Undersheriff. A real important job, having sat in that seat once upon a time. I found that it was very interesting. And one of the things about Ron is that he has a tremendous amount of experience, and he's not wet behind the ears. And that helps in that kind of a job. We were just chatting about some of the events that have occurred here in the county, and it was kind of a tragedy, but I was glad to hear him say what he said, because it explained to me why the verdict was the way that it was. So with that, Ron, you got the floor as long as you wanted.
First of all, I'm Ron Cameron, Ron Zucker directs the jail. Ron Perry retired, we'll get all that straight. We had all the Rons out there. It was easy for Sheriff Benedict to blame something on something. Put that sign out in the hallway with our names up there, and I said, yeah, that's pretty cool, Bill. And he said, you don't understand, when I go down, you're all coming with me. So that's all. But I want to thank Don and all of you for having me here today, especially since you got me out of a trip down to Silverville. I just saved a whole bunch of money, so I appreciate all that. It's good to see friends like Weaver and Maggie and Jim, Bishop. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. So about a year ago, I mentioned Ron Peregrine. Just an excellent person all the way around. He was our Undersheriff, and he had been there for quite some time. And he had been there for quite some time, but he finally decided at 70 he was ready to pull the pin. And so he retired, and I moved from the chief criminal deputy slot into the Undersheriff's position. I kind of thought, this should be a breeze. Like Don said, I've been in law enforcement since 1979. And boy, I tell you what, one of the jobs that came with being an Undersheriff was the emergency manager. And that was a whole new ballgame. You know, for years, I predicated my entire career on interagency cooperation, working with Port Angeles Police and SQUIM and Washington State Patrol and all these different law enforcement agencies. And I enjoyed that. You know, this is a small area, none of us can get it done alone, and so we all got together, and people around the state were envious on how we were able to work together on all these law enforcement agencies. But now, this emergency management thing, it's huge. It's not just law enforcement agencies, it's fire departments, it's ambulance services, it's the hospital, it's PUD, it's, I can go on, roads, public works, on it goes. And we've got to get all these entities together when it comes time to face a disaster so we can organize a response to help put things back together. And of course, that ain't going to happen overnight, but if we can make it organized, at least we can be productive, save lives, help people, and put all those things together. So let's talk about emergency management. What do we do? Well, I have two wonderful employees that are emergency management coordinators who have forgotten more about emergency management than I probably will ever know. I would have loved to have had them here today for you, but I had them in school all week, and I didn't want to bother their week. But they are excellent. Not only they're excellent at what they know, they're excellent volunteer managers, because this is so big. We have almost 100 volunteers from throughout the county that help us with things like the Emergency Operations Center, where we dispatch different area entities to respond to these various disasters, to teach people. We have things called Map Your Neighborhood, which I'll talk a little bit about later. We have what's called CERT training, and all these things are available to folks that want to volunteer and help us in times of disaster. So some of the disasters that we would deal with are what we usually see. You know, storms, flooding, maybe snow. Sometimes there are man-made disasters. Many of us were around when we had the oil spill. That was an EOC function, all those things. And those are the things we try to stand up and respond to help with the dispatch of all the different responding agencies. But I guess what's been on everybody's mind and what we're preparing for now is what I call the Cascadia RIP. And I got that from a book I read. It's called Cascadia RIP 9.0 or something. Very good book if you ever get a chance to read it. But it kind of explains everything. And just a little bit of history. You know, scientists have discovered through looking at the beaches out on the coast and stuff that these earthquakes, these major earthquakes happen in our area because of this Cascadia subduction zone that exists off our coast. And it starts somewhere around Northern California and it goes all the way up around through Vancouver Island. And I don't know how far offshore it is, but it's a couple of plates that come together, and I'm no geologist or anything like that, but apparently what happens is that they start squeezing themselves together. And in geographical time, it's probably not long, but to us it could be hundreds, if not 1,000 years. But the pressure builds and builds and builds until bang, it lets go. And when it lets go, it moves. And that starts a shake. And it's a violent shake. And that's where an earthquake of 9.0 proportion happens. I mean, we're talking things like happened in Alaska in '64, that happened down in Indonesia, that happened in Japan, what was that, 2010? That's what's going to happen. And it will shake violently for 5 minutes, and it's going to seem forever. How many here know Jim Buck? Love that guy. He has put so much research and time into this and developed responses. He gives a great talk on this whole thing like I'm trying to do today. And what he'll do is he will start a clock. And he'll put a timer down and he'll say, okay, I'm going to start. He'll tell everybody, I'm going to start. He's going to set it for 5 minutes. And he sets it down there. And he just starts talking away. And just ignores the clock. And away he goes. And it seems like a long time. And then finally it dings. And then he points out the fact, okay, that was 5 minutes. So for that 5 minutes, you haven't been able to stand, you haven't been able to get up, because that's how violent it's going to be. It's going to be an incredibly devastating event. Not only that, but different areas of our county are going to be affected differently. We have areas that the strata is such that things will just essentially liquefy. So not only will we lose buildings and structures and bridges and roads, but the ground will essentially liquefy. Squim is a pretty bad area, the Dungeness Valley is pretty bad, there's other areas. How many drive around Lake Crescent fairly often? When you come back, especially, you notice it, and you look across the lake to where the Spruce Railroad side, and you can see the side of Pyramid Peak where it's sliding. Well, that's a liquefaction zone. That's what's causing that, you know, and that's just rain and stuff over time. Imagine if it shook for 5 minutes, what's going to happen there? It's just going to be completely devastating. And that's just the earthquake. Now, Don talked about the tsunami that we'll have a little bit of time, but not much. Throughout the county, they have what they call these AHAB warning sirens that will go off to alert those people that live near the water that a tsunami has occurred. And once a month, those things are tested if anybody lives near them. That's what those are. And they go off and they have a test. If you watch the paper, they always advertise it. But those things go off to alert for the tsunami. We're kind of lucky in Clallam County because, you know, for most of us, we don't have to go very far to go up. You know what I'm saying? Even in places like Dia Bay and Clallam Bay, they have really done a good job of organizing themselves so if this siren goes off and this event occurs, they're going to go up and they're going to get out of it. Even in Port Angeles, of course, downtown Port Angeles is going to be devastated, but scientists figure the tsunami may come up maybe as far as 3rd Street. So it's devastating. I'm trying to minimize it, and you can see how we move up and get out of the way. But that isn't the problem. The problem is going to be the aftermath, like Don was talking about. What's going to happen when we lose our power? Folks, I have heard that we may not have power for a year. A year! Can you imagine? I mean, it's incredible. I hope that isn't true, but what do you do? So, and look at everything that you rely on for the power. That's when we're going to be really, really concerned about losing lives, is after the event, in the weeks and months after the event. Because how many people do we have in Clallam County that rely, say, on maybe dialysis or oxygen? You know, they have oxygen generators. I don't know. Use your imagination that they need that stuff, and they have no power to power them. Don said our communication will be cut off for who knows that. So we got all these problems, and who knows how many people will lose there. It's just absolutely devastating. So what are we doing? Well, we have some really, really dedicated people like Jim, and I'm going to steal a little bit of Jim's thunder. He has done, Jim Buck, he has done such a great job in researching all this. He has actually divided the county up into 20 what we call islands. And these islands are communities that we've kind of designed that have been strategically written out across the map, where they're going to be kind of isolated because of bridges, like Morse Creek will be gone probably. And then throughout the county, we have 20 such islands. And so what we're hoping to do over time is get volunteers and people learning that live within those islands to step up and become leaders to help organize within the islands. And so they can help the people that live within those islands, and they can communicate with the next level, which we have separated into five commands. Working with the fire districts and that kind of thing, we have further isolated our county into 5 area commands. So if you do the math, there's probably about 4 islands in each command. And so they can help their individual islands organize, and then they can report to the Emergency Operations Center there where we can help you get resources and stuff. So some of the other things that we're doing right now, and most of you have probably read about this Cascadia Rising event that's going to occur in the first part of June. I don't have my calendar out, I should have the calendar.
June 6th.
It starts the 6th.
Or 7th.
6th or 7th, it goes during that week. It's like 4 days long. And it's really organized by the Washington National Guard. And they are doing, let's face it, they have multiple resources to help in such events and abilities to get us those things we need. Because what are we going to need? We're going to need fuel. We're going to need water. We're going to need generators. We're going to need food. We're going to need medical supplies. On and go. And they are working on developing a plan on how they're going to get that stuff to us. And of course, they're the military. And this is their assignment. They've got colonels assigned, they've got captains assigned, all the way down, and that's what they do 40 hours a week. So it's really developing quickly. They're going to help us with communications and things like that. One of the things that we're really lucky about is I talked about the liquefaction. Well, Fairchild Airport sits on a pretty good bedrock. We're pretty lucky there. There is a lot of scientists that believe our airport will survive. And so we'll be able to get in some rather large aircraft. Fairchild has been in the past classified as a tier, I think the FAA calls it a tier 3 runway, which will take like C-130s, a good sized aircraft. We're hoping to get that status in an emergency situation return. They have in the last few years backed it off a little bit, but I think that's more of a business decision than it is a safety one. So we're going to see how we can, the board has been very receptive to helping us with this. So they will have the opportunity to bring stuff in. And in this week in June, they're going to practice that. You're actually going to see the presence of the military bringing in these big aircraft and bringing in stuff for us. It's also going to give us local folks the opportunity to test our commands and our island theories and work on our communications, because let's face it, our communications here are going to be devastated. Sir?
Would it be helpful to get the trees down in Lincoln Park to get those military aircraft down?
You know, that's an interesting question. I have no idea, but I wish Sheriff Benedict was here, because he is a pilot extraordinaire and he'd be able to tell you and give you a good answer to that. So, you know, but unfortunately he's in Hawaii this week. But, so I don't really have an answer to that. I don't think that
I'll answer the question.
I don't think that they have commented. It's
The answer
possible.
is yes, they're a navigation hazard for aircraft. It should come
It
down.
probably answered my question, because I really don't have an answer.
I just wanted to get that little.
So, but anyway, you know, and this is countywide. One of the things that we do for our communications to help ensure communications, remember I told you about our volunteer staff? We have an ARES staff, Amateur Radio Emergency Services. Is that anyway, I just know him as ARES. Phil Carter, who is the head of ARES, my gosh, he donated over 1,000 volunteer hours last year just working on amateur radios and helping us with the EOC. And the commissioners are helping us. We are putting new antennas on the roof of the courthouse. I hope the courthouse survives. But, you know, well, let's face it, as far as the EOC is concerned, the Emergency Operations Center, there's really only one event that can occur that will allow us not to use that, and that would be this 9/0 RIP. So anything less than that, maybe we'll survive, and we will have good HF communications, high-frequency communications, which will allow us to talk to, like, Jefferson County and the State Department of Emergency Management in Fort Lewis, actually it's Camp Ryan, to request whatever it is we need. And that could be up to and including a MASH hospital. We don't know what we'll need, but it could very well be needing that. Coast Guard is involved with this event that's going to occur. All area agencies, all those agencies I discussed, SWIM is doing an incredibly magnificent job of putting themselves together. Fire District 3 is working with SWIM Police. Faith-based organizations in the Dungeness Valley are coming together to develop areas that we call CPODs, and I'm not sure what CPOD stands for, but basically they're areas where you can go to get supplies. Because you think that most churches have like a community hall and a kitchen and stuff like that, so those are very convenient places to use. And the pastors in the area have recognized that, so they've come together to offer their services to be able to help us out in a place for these folks to go. Centrally, we've been working with all the different entities here to do very similar things, working with Port Angeles, not just the police department, but again, we've got Fire District 2, Port Angeles Fire, we've got county roads, city roads, public works, and then of course we've got the West End, who is, you know, that's going to be a particular challenge because there's people out there that we care about, and they're a lot more distributed than they are here. It's a big area out there. I worked out there for 10 years as a law enforcement officer. Let me tell you, it's huge. It wasn't uncommon for us to travel 45 minutes on a code 3 call, which is lights and sirens. You know, typically, you know, that's what happens. You're in Clallam Bay and calls in the bush. You know, that's how it works. And so, pardon me. So that's what happens. So, some of the things that we do, as I mentioned earlier, is our staff and our volunteers work on educating the people. You know, that's the one thing we as the county government can provide. You know, it's very difficult for us to spend your taxpayer dollars to get stuff that we may spend a lot of money on and just set aside for it not to be used for a long time, because it costs to store it, it costs to maintain it, because we all know no use is abuse for like generators and things like that. And we do some of this, but I think the most important thing that we can do is educate and get people prepared. And there are many resources available to everybody to read and to refer to as far as resources to help you prepare for such an event. And if you have the ability to check our website, which is, you go to the Clallam County website, then you go to the Sheriff's website, and then there's an emergency management section there. And then as you start watching it, there's already a section on tsunamis. But as we get closer to this Cascadia event, you can start seeing more stuff referring you to resources to help you survive a massive earthquake. And how to deal with it, where to go, what to do, and those kinds of things. And as we develop these islands and command areas, etc., we'll start identifying them more and more as time goes on. So the ladies, Penny Linderman and Jamie Weiskup, they are those emergency manager coordinators that I talked to you about a little while ago. They are constantly out in the field doing things like map your neighborhood. Is anybody here involved with map your neighborhood at all, or know what it is, besides Maggie?
My daughter and son-in-law just bought over on Gerke in that area. Neighborhood has gone through and mapped who has generators, who has storage buildings.
That's what it is. As a community, you come together, and so maybe you, sir, you own a backhoe, and you have a significant generator or something like that. Maybe you have a doctor that lives in your community, or somebody that can provide some service, and you know where these people are. So when these events happen, and you're in that island that we talk about, you know where to go for the help that you need, because you're not going to be able to pick up even the cell phone or anything else. Nothing's going to work. And so you'll know where to go so you can get the resources and the help you need. If somebody's hurt, you might be able to find that doctor or that medic. You may know where a deputy lives, because my deputies are going to have a hard time. We're working on plans on how they're going to respond and what they're going to do and how they're going to talk to us. So this is a huge animal, and like I said, when I stepped up to the podium earlier, it is so large. It has been the biggest learning curve of my life. I cannot believe how intensive this whole program has been. It's just, man, I just get so impressed with people like Jim Buck and the ladies that work on it. Even my volunteers are incredibly gifted. Some of them are technological savvy, you know, and they work on our radio stuff and help me, like Bill Carter, like I mentioned with the Aries, and it goes on and on and on. So, again, I'm not sure what we can expect. Of course, we don't know when it's going to happen. They figured the last one happened about 300 to 600 years ago.
1700.
Yeah, they think about 1700. And, you know, it could happen as early as, I think, 350 years, as many as 1,200 years. So who knows? It could happen tomorrow. It may never happen.
1700 was a devastating earthquake. There weren't many survivors that spoke English, wrote things down.
Right.
And the largest tsunami in years hit Japan.
Yeah.
And it was the first time, the old timers said, that a tsunami hit without an earthquake preceding it.
Oh.
It was an earthquake, but it was 3,000 miles
away.
So that earthquake, we could get a tsunami without an earthquake.
Sure.
Or possibly an earthquake, and the tsunami would go the other way.
Yeah.
It wouldn't come back on shore.
Well, you're right.
But either one. But it could be both simultaneous. One first and then the other shortly thereafter.
And there's a lot of truth to that, because of course as an emergency manager I subscribe to a lot of stuff that's on these silly BlackBerry stuff, but there was let's see, last September there was a major earthquake down in Chile. This thing blew up for our area because we were gonna, you know, maybe stand up not knowing what the tsunami might develop out of that earthquake. As it was, it didn't turn out to be anything, and they realized that fairly quickly. But they stood us up right away, just in case. You don't know. And I'm sure most of you have seen the pictures of what happened in Japan, and if you haven't, I encourage you to Google it. I mean, you know, Japan is a pretty progressive nation, and they're, you know, industrial-wise and stuff like that. They're still in the Stone Age where those events happen. And I'm not talking about the nuclear reactor event. I'm talking about just the communities that were devastated. It was just horrible. And they're still trying to work themselves out. I missed a talk from a young lady, this is a scientist from Japan that was here recently. I guess she did some speech down by Downbreakers or someplace, and she was talking about how they're struggling to recover from that. So we can count on that. And the best thing we can do is prepare. Sir?
What Japan is, my wife is from Japan.
Oh.
Her sister was in Kobe when the earthquake hit there. The Japanese thought that from an engineering standpoint, when Kobe hit, they were ready for it. But that was, I believe, a thrust type of event.
Oh.
And everything that they had was built for lateral shaking. And that's why their roadways collapsed, the train lines all collapsed. They weren't designed for that type of earthquake. And they've gone back and retrofitted a lot. And then, of course, we had the next earthquake where the nuclear reactors went down. But in Kobe, there was a huge loss of life because the mayor of Kobe was a pacifist, a socialist, who hated the sight of Japanese military uniforms and detested American military uniforms. She would not let the defense forces of Japan or the Marines that we have in Okinawa come in and help until she was overridden maybe about a week later. So it's critical to get the military in to help.
Oh, yeah. They've got the resources, they've got the ability, they get the manpower to help us. And that's, you know, who knows how long it'll take. I mean, we have to build some artificiality into this event that we're going to have in June. We have to. Just to try to test everything that we have available to us, you know. I'm not a gloom and doom guy. I am a very optimistic individual. I do not want to believe that Clallam County will be completely devastated. I want something that we'll be able, we're going to find some way to work out of it. I don't know how that will be. I don't know what it'll look like. Because there'll be aftershocks and there'll be all those things that we have to deal with. But I don't want to paint a picture that it isn't survivable. Otherwise, I can't get people to help me. If it's not survivable, then let's just evacuate and get the heck out of here. You know? I don't want to do that. I want to believe that this is not a no-win scenario, that we can somehow work through all this. Sir?
Something you mentioned earlier, the education side of it, that's so very important. It's like anything, if you hear what you don't know, the more people are educated, the less panic and less irrational behavior.
Absolutely.
That's just going to have to be ongoing.
You know, and we in Clallam County, I really believe, we're pretty resilient folks. I mean, we got a lot of water. Oh my God, we got plenty of water. I mean, last summer was a little bit unnerving, but you know, for the most part, we probably do okay on that end. And you know, I got up this morning, I had 8 deer in my backyard. I mean, you know, so I mean, we're going to find ways to be able to survive. I mean, I think it'll work out. But you're right, sir. It's the preparedness. It's the education, getting out there. Sure, as emergency manager and our emergency management program, we're going to have resources to help everybody. But I think if you're prepared, I'm trying to remember what Ron said. In that, when he was in the Coast Guard, he spent his life in the Coast Guard. And you can save so much time and save so many lives if you have your life vest on before it happens. You know? And that's what I understand what he means, because that's what we're trying to say here. If we have our life vest on, if we have the knowledge, that being the life vest, we can help others survive this whole thing and work on it. Sir?
My name's Bob Ford.
Hey, Bob.
I want you to remember my name because when you're sheriff, I may need Y2K. I live in Happy Valley. And when the threat of that became real, somebody up there came and knocked on my door, Fred Hatfield. He said, I raise sheep. He said, I'm thinking about putting together an emergency response neighborhood thing. And we did. And I bought some goats, and we bought a generator, and we did some things to prepare for what may or may not have happened, as you know, nothing happened.
Sure.
So where I'm going with that is, I lived in Las Vegas for a number of years, and underneath the freeways, there were 55-gallon drums of water, thousands of them, stockpiled underneath there. Given the resources that you have here, there's actually 3 parts to my question. One, have you considered, when the United States goes to help another country, the first thing they send is a great big aircraft carrier. It can convert salt water, and it can provide enormous amounts of electricity. Have you considered maybe a World War II carrier parked out there that was capable of generating some electricity and running an extension cord out to that?
That'd be a big extension. I can't say that at my level, but we have talked about it, and the Navy is involved in this exercise as well. So I believe that that is part and parcel in the long term. Now, I don't know how long it'll take to get that aircraft carrier here.
If you start now.
But that has been brought up.
And the other thing about the tsunami, you know, if the tsunami hits in the Port Angeles area, there is no Coast Guard station.
That's right.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about the command and control of looting. That's usually a big contention in something like that. And the other thing that I think is a great resource, and we have a considerable amount of horses. People got here on horseback, and we can leave on horseback. So those are the kind of things that are flopping through my mind, and I'd like to hear you address them.
A couple of things. Let's start with the looting, because that is something that's big on our minds, and Bill and I, the sheriff and I, talk a lot about that, and we've actually entered into conversations with like Walmart and the Safeway in the county, and I know the city has talked to their city businesses as well. It's going to be very difficult to respond to that, and I'll tell you why. Because our number of law enforcement officers available is going to be so fractured, because you're not going to be able to get there. That's the problem, is to get there to respond. And so what we're trying to do is work with the stores to see what kind of emergency response plan they have to work with themselves. I do know that they are actually thinking about it. They got people smarter than me that's in retail that are working on that kind of response. We'll do what we can, of course, but again, you know, I think in our area here by the Safeway, I think I'm the only one that lives in that island. I'm not sure. Sir? Well, I got Maggie. She don't live too far away.
She's not sharing.
One of the things you were talking about was mapping the neighborhood. Okay, now in connection with looting, this is where maybe our Second Amendment rights come in handy when you have a gun. Because not all the looting is going to be centered around stores. A lot of the looting is going to, if people are smart, what they're going to look at, they can use that mapping in 2 different ways. The thieves can look at who's got everything in their neighborhood. They'll stay away from the stores. They'll come at you. Now, where I live, we don't have people who can contribute as much as some of the others here. We live in a neighborhood where they have a halfway house, and you probably are familiar with Al's Trailer Park. I know Bill Benedict and a lot of the other sheriff's deputies are, because they hear from us quite frequently concerning that. Those are the type of people I'm talking about. They're not the type of people that prepare other than learn where the food sources are and go to them, especially if they're free. So these are some of the other considerations.
And those are the things, you know, that we're going to have to deal with, you know. And again, when I say getting prepared, it's not just, you know, I came here to talk about how the citizens can prepare for this event, but you're absolutely right. We're constantly working on plans on how law enforcement and other public safety people are going to be able to respond, and so they can be prepared too. Because you're absolutely right, those are big concerns. You're not the first one to bring that up.
The comment was made about bringing up an aircraft carrier out there. The only problem I see with that is an oil terminal out on the end of Vegas Hook. That if there's a tsunami, that terminal's gone.
That's right.
And that means the harbor's trashed and the straits potential.
Yep. And Tesoro is part of this.
Well, That's my turn. I used to manage things.
Yeah, they're part and parcel of this whole
I know.
thing too. So, yeah, those are, that isn't something I even thought about right until right now. But I do know that they're.
But conversely, it's like, that's gonna be minimal thought, because if we've had that kind of catastrophe around here, there's gonna be a lot more bigger issues to deal with than an oil pollution.
It's,
In all honesty, in all fairness.
Maggie, we'll go to Maggie.
The people in this room probably could look at the Mount Pleasant program that we've developed in the last 5 years up on the Mount Pleasant Road. We've gone through, by mapping our neighborhood, we not only know who have generators, who have four-wheel drive, who have animals, people who are with health issues. We know where our law enforcement officers live. We know people who store fuel, food. We use our Grange for that. Almost everybody that has joined onto this, and there's more than 200 or 300 people in our neighborhood who developed this program. And we also test monthly the radios for emergency preparedness. We also do twice a year a program where you shut everything down in your home and you live off of what you've got. No electricity, nothing. See what you can survive on. And one of our neighbors up there goes, well, I just don't know how I'm going to do this. I said, you have a motorhome sitting in your yard. I'd be sitting in that motorhome if it was me. A lot of people don't think that far ahead as to, well, I've got a camper out there, I've got a travel trailer. You're fully equipped. We also have a great resource for water on the Mount Pleasant area with the dam that's up there.
That's right.
And people forget that that exists. You'll find out that there's quite a few people in our neighborhood that have 2 and 3 generators. I happen to be one of them, because that husband who prepared for everything.
Oh, yeah.
But it's really important that you look at this, because the county has used our neighborhood as a model for this type of preparedness.
And Maggie's right. Talking with Jamie and Penny, you guys have really got it together. They are the premier map your neighborhood, I guess.
We've worked at a long time.
That we look to show the model to everybody else. And I'm sure that every time the girls get their map your neighborhood speeches, they talk about what's going on in Mount Pleasant, because that's a community that really put it together well.
Even a lost dog, when we've got a lost dog, if we've got a lost dog in our neighborhood, everybody gets this email that there's a dog missing, and they get a response to it. Or if we have a bad person in our neighborhood, the alert goes out that he's driving through our neighborhood, and he has a tendency not to feel welcome.
Sir, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to ask 2 questions. The hospital, if studies been done on the hospital to determine its survivability in an earthquake or something?
Interesting. I am really surprised to find that the hospital, even though it sits on a bluff, they really believe that the damage to the hospital, because the bedrock underneath would be, quote, moderate, that it would not be devastating. And that was kind of refreshing. But they're still not going to be in power. But they do. They have generators. And, so how much the generators can provide, that's a big building, 110% for how long?
I was going to say my second question. As I'm getting older, I find I add a new pill every year, it seems. But there are standard medications, whether it's going to be for diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, heart disease, whatever. What plans are there for getting in critical life support medications that people are going to need on a daily basis?
I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. That's really good. But that's where the hospital comes in, I would think, and the medical community. They are part and parcel of this whole project that we are developing. And remember, this exercise, and I'll be with you in a minute, sir, this exercise that we have in June, it's not a pass or fail thing. What it's going to do, it's going to test what we already know, and it's going to identify what we don't know. And so if the hospital doesn't think about those medications that are necessary to have on hand or a resource to bring them in, then we're going to identify that now so that we can develop a plan that it will come in. I wanted to address, sir, I forgot to address the second part of your question, and that was the critters. You know, you talked about horses. I don't think we have really thought about, it has been mentioned about, you know, getting a group together about the horses, but we have addressed issues about our pets and our livestock and things like that. In fact, next Friday, we have a special tabletop event that we're going to do down in Port Townsend that relates directly to that, just responding Department of Agricultural type stuff, and then it includes the critters.
Just on a previous note, when somebody brought up about looting, is there in place a command for the sheriff's department or any other law enforcement how to deal with looters? Is it going to be shoot on sight, or is it going to be let it go, let all the stuff leave the store? And I mean, what's the law enforcement
We are
mindset?
working with the internal government of the courthouse, which includes the prosecutor. And this is one of the questions that I have sent to him, so that when we come together, we're going to answer those questions. You know, what are our legal rights? I mean, he could come in here and talk to you today about what your legal rights are when you go home this afternoon. But when you get into an event like that, the whole dynamic changes. I mean, you know, there's a whole different world there. So what steps it up? Where are we going to go with that? And, you know, that's a legal question, but the prosecutor is the one that's going to have to ask. We can respond and try to deal with it if we can get to your house, but what are the legalities of it?
You only have to shoot a few of them, where do you get around?
Darwin's theory. This gentleman was next.
If it is as bad as it potentially be, basically there's no road access to the peninsula
Correct.
existing. We have all these generators, these vehicles, where are we gonna get the fuel for them?
Good question.
Are we gonna bring a big tanker in out here to a non-existent port?
Good question.
So we're gonna be without fuel.
That is huge. We will be for a time without fuel. However, the National Guard does have some thought processes on how we're going to deal with that.
We bring it in by air tanker?
Possibly. You know, but that won't help us as individuals, but it will help like county roads to maybe get the roads start fixed up, generators for the hospital, whatever, that kind of thing.
Right, but the general public is going to be on foot.
They're going to be on foot because we all know, you know, you're going to need a lot of stay-bill to keep fuel alive. I mean, the way engines are nowadays, you just can't, not like the old days when your lawnmower will last 2 years and start up on the first pull.
And that includes the generators.
Yeah, so who is next, sir?
I have a generator, and I keep a couple of jerry cans full of gasoline, but you're talking about months of no power. There's nothing there. But the problem is, yeah, you can generate electricity just from some panels, some electrical panels. The trouble of it is, it's low voltage DC power, and the generator puts out 110 volts.
Yeah.
Alternating current. Well, your car battery starts your car engine with a starter. And your car battery is low voltage DC power. And I'm trying to find out how to use set up a starter that I can use a battery to turn over my generator.
Oh,
And I think it can be done, but I'm a klutz when it comes to doing something like that. I need somebody who's a smart mechanic to
maybe
figure
that's
that
where
one out.
Dr. Neighborhood comes in. You have a mechanic to help you put it together. Ma'am?
You know, we're talking about the hospital, you say it's not going to go into the drain.
Well, that's what they said.
Yeah, but what happens when everything surrounding it goes into the drain?
How do you get there? That's a good question, yeah. And that's the whole thing.
No,
It's an island in and of itself.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to swim through that,
That's right.
because everything's possible down
That's
there.
right. Who's next? Sir? Oh, yeah.
I think part of the education is let people know that they're on their own for a time.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right.
And we probably, you're discussing your department, each deputy, city, police, are going to be concerned about their own well-being, their own family.
That's the number one thing in our response plan, take care of your family. I'm sorry, I mean, that's just the way it is.
So that makes them unavailable.
For a while.
Ron, one of the things we learned in our Y2K exercise was communication. We had a guy come and say, you know, if you just take a CB radio and run a wire horizontally about 30 feet, you can change the range of that communication up to 20, 30 miles.
Wow.
And it's cheap, and you can get, you know, swap meets for people to give them away.
Oh, I've got radio, nobody uses them anymore. I mean,
But that's a very effective way to communicate.
yeah, if you had 20-something-year-olds in here and they say, CB, what?
That's why they need us old folks.
But, you know, aside from all that, if you don't have a CB radio, you know, these FRS radios that you find at Costco and stuff, you know, down Swains and everything, great little communicators. Fantastic. Dee, did you have a question?
I was going to say the last question, but I'll say it just in case. It's not a question, it's a statement. I want you to know how far you've come. Because I was in the '64 earthquake here. And a lot of our parents sent us to school the next day with inner tubes on.
Really?
We laugh about it. The class laughs about it.
I remember that. I was in Mrs. Kinney's first grade class over at Monroe School. I remember the giving shit and stuff. I remember that. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to let everybody know that Monday at the county commissioners meeting, there's an emergency management briefing on the Cascadia subduction zone, and they have draft resolution in this agenda. What's the draft resolution?
The draft resolution is just that. It's a resolution, you know, that basically, I'm very proud of our county commissioners, and Jen, you were very supportive when you were there too. They are really taking this very seriously, and they're supporting emergency management in a lot of different ways. Now, what we're doing is we're giving them a draft resolution that basically outlines that 20 island, 5 command section of the county thing, and just having them recognize that that's what our response plan will be. And that's essentially it. It's not, you know, added to code or anything like that. It's just keeping people aware. We started off, Jim Buck gave his presentation to the commissioners. Was that to you, Jim, or was that just after the first year? Okay, just after the first year. I mean, it was like one of the first meetings this year. And they were so interested that they asked for just a follow-up, see how we're doing. And that's what's happening on Monday.
So to let you know, that is posted, that presentation by Jim is posted at Clallam Public Eye, along with Colonel Brown's, and I'll put those in a playlist along with the one from Monday. So that people want to keep up with what's going on with Cascadia, I'll keep it up on Clallam Public Eye.
Thank you. That's great stuff. Colonel Braun is one of the head Washington National Guard guys that have put together the response plan. And if you ever happen to see the paper, I've been to his, I stopped going to his presentations because I've been to him about 3 times. But if you haven't been, I very much encourage you to go. He's a great speaker, and he's got, it's not death by PowerPoint, but he's got a lot of PowerPoint slides that will really help you understand the response. Remember I mentioned tiered airports and all that kind of stuff, but he can explain a lot better than I can.
Now that first one was done down at City Council chambers.
That's right. That's the one I went to. And we did another one out in Swim. Yes, sir.
Well, if this thing comes to pass, beforehand, of course, you're talking to the prosecuting attorney.
Louder.
You're talking to the prosecuting attorney and finding out what you can and can't do with looters. To find out from the individuals out there what they would be expected to do when you can't get out to where they are because of the roads and all. When they find somebody butchering one of their horses or people that are out in the pasture, what you would advise them to do, you know.
Butcher that.
Yeah, exactly. And those are good questions. That's a lifestyle, you know, so I agree with you, sir.
Hello, I'm a survivor of the 1959 Yellowstone earthquake. It was a 7.8 second highest earthquake recorded up to that time. And I remember, I was right in West Yellowstone. I was down on the floor for, it wasn't 5 minutes, it was only 7.8. And our soil was very sandy, so the waves were more mellow and they were longer troughs. And we were isolated. We had no radio communications except the fire lookout who we could relay for us. He was at 14,000. And, but anyway, we all got together and we were trying to get to Hebgen Dam. And we had an Army surplus weasel and we would have never made it. It was a contractor working on a road project, came down. He was isolated too, all the roads were blocked by rock slide, with a D8 cap. And we just went out to the Hebgen Dam, building a road through all the falls. And then the interesting thing that came out of it was a guy named Culligan built a survival shelter. This was in the days of the atomic scare. And he was a wealthy man, the water softener guy. And he came out and he built this fortress of a place underground, and he had bunkers and ventilators. I don't know where he thought he'd get the clean air to breathe down there. He built this beautiful fallout shelter that he had to get to from California. And so he's thinking in terms of one scenario. He builds it on the Hebgen Fall. That was responsible over roughly 1,000 year cycle. So we all survived the earthquake. A lot of our houses were wood and log. Most of our structures all survived. Cinder blocks came down. The fortress was totally destroyed by the Hebgen earthquake.
Call before you did.
And the other thing I want to mention is talk about horses getting here. The first people that came in small boats. And after, there's going to be no port facilities.
Right.
Freighters aren't going to be docking in Port Angeles for a while. So it's going to be like Dunkirk in Britain, small boats. And I think a lot of our aid's going to have to come from east of the Cascadia.
Yeah, the National Guard is actually looking at all that too. I was surprised to find that Hollywood Beach is not a good place to land. And apparently in history, when they were doing the hogback and everything, all the rocks went off the beach there. And so it's really shallow and very rocky in there. And so the draft is a lot less than you think it should be there. We're discovering all these little things, you know, and it's good that we're discovering it now. So. But like I say, I think us in Clallam County, we're very resilient. We like to work together. I work with Bob, you know, very closely. I mean, as crabby as he is all the time. Bob Hamlin in Jefferson County, he's a big help to me. And we are working together with Jefferson County because, again, we can't do this all by ourselves, you know, and so we're going to help Jefferson County with places like Diamond Point, where there's some checkboard areas that are in Jefferson County. You know, there aren't going to be any borders when that happens. We're just going to help in West End areas. How in the heck is Jefferson County going to work with West Jefferson County? We're going to help. We're going to do something. So these are all plans that we're dealing with. Like I say, I think we're all pretty resilient. I know we'll somehow get everything together and survive this catastrophe, but I'm sure we can. So. Sure, I don't mind.
There was a couple of things that come up in the questions and comments. I had intended to have Jim Leskinovich in from the hospital, and that question come up because of the fact that it sits in a very vulnerable place. And so we'll get a chance to hear what he has to say, because the hospital is going to be full of people in an event that it happens. And that place has got to be pretty safe in order to accommodate what we have. Another interesting thing to me, and since it's interesting to me, I'm sure it is to you, is the earthquake situation in Japan. I spent about 4 years there on occupation duty and on also Far East Command staff level. And I was up on top of the Samuel Hotel, and that area was never bombed, and it was early in the morning, and I'd gone up just to take a look at the sunrise, and I heard a roar coming, and I couldn't really tell which direction it was coming from. It was one of those roars, it's all around you, like a tremendous explosion. And so I just sort of stood there for a minute, and then I seen a cloud come over a little hill area that was all solid houses. And when I say solid houses, it's just like a pie put together because they're so close. What that was the dust coming off from the buildings as the wave, and that's what it was. You could actually see a wave in the soil. And so that was one of the experiences that I had there that I locked in the back of my head. I forget where I put my glasses. But I remember that. Anyway, the next item was Matsushima. I don't know how many of you remember the Japanese, the last one that they had, that huge one that killed, I don't know how many, it was several 100,000 people killed. And it was a perfect picture of a little town called Matsushima. There was 2 ridges come down, and then they dropped through a gap. Then there was a large area, probably 3 to 4 sections of land. What it was an old bay, and the earth had caused that, and that was right off the area where the tsunami started. And the picture that they showed in the newspaper, it was flat. Matsushima was probably one of the most quaint little villages that I've ever seen. It was a temple monuments to it. That bridge had come out, there was a big temple on each of them. The picture that showed in the Daily News was the temples are there, but below that, everything was gone. Everything wiped out. And that was a natural area for that tsunami to come into. And we have a coast that has a lot of those on it. And it's an area that is going to probably have to have a high priority in the relief area. Another thing that I noticed in Japan was that even a little hooch had a bucket or something, a big bowl like a terracotta bowl or something, parked under part of the roof. And I wondered what that was for. There is the supply of water. Right. You could just put it underneath your house and you got water. There may be mosquito larvae in there, but boil it. They've got vitamins in them. So eat them. And you might get hungry. But those were just a couple thoughts that come to my mind at the time, and that's such an easy thing to do. Sitting out on the woodshed, there's 6 5-gallon buckets, and they're all full of water, and they stay full of water, because if they get full, they have to put another one back. And it's so easy to do, and that will save a tremendous amount of problems that could occur from some of those results. So, with that, I'd like to thank you for being here. And we will have Leskinovich in from the hospital, and he will follow us probably right on behind you, and that will tie it together. And I think those are the big questions that you have, because we're going to have a lot of injuries. And the hospital is going to be in serious trouble, even for any kind of medication, let alone beds to be used, because the beds will probably be filled in a matter of hours after that.
There won't be a hospital.
There may not be a hospital, that's another thing. And maybe we'll start using the old hospital where it's now the VA.
You bet, that downtown.
Okay, anybody have any more questions to our...
Just real quick, you mentioned about plans. Do you have any plans running for sheriff this next coming?
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll see what Bill's up to.
Even if he runs.
Well, he's announced he's not running.
Yeah, I don't know. Bill's one of those funny guys. You know, his health is with him, and you know what? He's a great boss, and he's doing a wonderful job. We've got, the morale in our department is absolutely amazing. I was talking to Don. We are going through a change right now because, God, we've got so many 60-year-old deputies running around, and they're getting tired, so they're starting to retire. So you're seeing some new blood. But we've got a really good hiring scheme. We are hiring just top-notch people. We got a brand new deputy named Ben Tomko. He came from Utah. Very nice kid. I've received nothing but accolades on him. I said, well, I thought he was a 5-year deputy. No, I just got on the road the other day. And he's doing great. Paul Federline, he was our employee of the year. He's only been a deputy 3 or 4 years. He's just absolutely incredible. I mean, we were just so fortunate to have these people. And to me, it's all because of Bill's leadership. And, as long as he's there, I'm there to support him.
I have one more question. After the June 7th to 10th exercise, will you come back to the island idea and maybe have trainings within the island?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so it's going to get individualized.
See, and once again, like I said, the event is going to teach us. It's not a pass or fail thing. In fact, I'm sure I'm going to fall flat on my face. But the reality is that's going to teach me what I need to do. What do we need to work on? Maybe these looting ideas, maybe other communication problems or things like that. But all those things will factor in to help teach and create the leadership within the islands and in the commands and, of course, ultimately EOC.
Ron, he keeps saying that if we have a tsunami up the 3rd Street, it should be wiped out. But with Ennis Creek, Peabody Creek, if you have a tsunami, those are going to go right
Yeah,
up
that's
the
going to
creek.
wash right up
And
there.
anybody from any close proximity
Yeah.
of that is going to get hit.
Oh, absolutely. The downtown will be devastated. Those low areas, like you say, it's going to wash right up there. So, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to experience problems above that 3rd Street. I mean, have you guys seen the old pictures? I'm sure Don probably got some, but the old pictures of the courthouse on stilts, where Lincoln Street's on stilts, we've all seen those. And so, who knows what's going to happen in the courthouse? I mean, it'll probably be gone. I don't know for sure, but it probably will be. And that, the downtown's all like that. It's going to be devastating, you're right. And in those valleys, Valley Creek, Tumwater, all that area is going to get hit. Four Seasons Ranch and stuff like that. So, but again, fortunately, we can go up. We're going to have a warning. We're going to be able to move up toward the high school and things like that. Get out of the way.
You were mentioning aircraft carrier coming in to provide desalination of water. Off the coast of Fukushima, when the United States sent the Ronald Reagan in there.
Yeah.
They were desalinating water there, but Fukushima was dumping 300 tons of radiated water per day into the Pacific, and a lot of sailors on the Ronald Reagan came down with cancer. Now, if like what Steve says happens out here, and we have a major oil spill, I don't think I'd want to drink that desalinated water.
Right.
Okay, anything more on this while we got him here as a prisoner? Okay, let's go to the national level. I think the hot button right now, of course, is the presidential election, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing. I know only one thing, and I'm not going to vote for Hillary. Yeah. You can take that for advice, whatever you want, but that's my vote for money. The second one is probably not much better, but at least he's got some ideas. And the thing that I like about him, and have a tendency to have this thought, is the fact that he's not a Democrat or a Republican. He's not a politician. He's a businessman. And what is government? Business is all that it is. If you can run a huge corporation, you can run the federal organization and state and on down the line. So that's something for you to think about, or you can throw it out, whichever you want to do. But anyway, that was my thought on it. At the state level, the session is still going. We're pretty safe. They haven't got into our pocketbooks so far. And got this thing filled up with signatures, so in it goes. And maybe we can get the $30 ticket back again, $35. Be a little bit better off. At the local level, I think probably the main thing that we're concerned with right now on the election side is Maggie Law. And so Maggie, do you have anything about your pending run for position?
Not really, other than to thank Jim Preston for stepping up and volunteering to be a co-chairman with Beaver for managing. Sue Ford is helping me with a webpage and brochures. We're just kind of right now in that infant stage of putting things together, looking at the individual who's running on the other side as to what his positions are. They seem to be more environmentalists than they do as to how to run our county.
And speaking of county commissioners, we happen to have one right where you live.
Back to reinforce what Ron was talking about before. Let me stand up here. The thing that I think needs to be uppermost on people's minds is water supply. Most all of us depend on electricity to get water out of wells. Very few of us depend on gravity to get water flowing to our house. So, in my own thinking, if you get a bunch of freeze-dried food, you can prepare yourself food-wise, but if you need water to add to it, water is the critical piece, because you can go without food a lot longer than you can go without water. The other thing, and this is from New Orleans, back during the hurricane, your pets are awfully important. There were a lot of people that did not want to get evacuated when they had the chance to be evacuated because they couldn't bring their pets with them in Louisiana. So think about your pets. Are they expendable or are they not? And how do you prepare not just for yourself but for your pets? And I love my pets. The education piece and the thinking ahead piece is really the critical thing to think about, because we are all going to be in the 18th century instantaneously. No electricity. So you've got to think about how do you live as an 18th century person rather than a 21st century person.
Buy a horse. Don, announcements from the floor. R.W. Robinson and Marsh Burfitt used to be our JDS representatives.
Yep.
And Pat Nolan and I have reorganized the John Birch Society meeting area. We meet at the Spring Library, 7 o'clock on the second Friday of every month. And it's a good meeting. It's all informational. And we invite anybody that, if you like information on what's going on underneath the current, we'd invite you to come and listen. Thank you.
Okay. Larry, you have something?
Well, we've been going to gun shows for quite a few years. As of now, we've ceased gun shows. The reasons being, our seniority is catching up with us, Don's and mine. The other reason is that our new state law that the voters passed a year and a half ago has caused all gun shows in the state to be reduced in vendors by about 50%. We are a small gun show, and we can't handle it very well, a 50% reduction we've already experienced. And vendors. It makes it very discouraging to have a gun show where you really can't put on a good gun show. So we quit. There will be no more. The second thing is, we have something called the PNSBA, which is our gun range organization. We have a gun range in the county. Don is getting up there. I'm getting up there. We can entice new members to join in the operation because we don't have a piece of land to entice them with. We thought we had a piece of land that was yanked out from under our feet here a few months ago. And now the county is going to look, I think they allocated money to find a new site. Well, I think the county should find a new site and they should damn well develop it.
Amen.
Amen.
They promised us, not me because I wasn't here, a new range when they seized Tongue Point. Well, I don't think we have the integrity to do it, but it's their job now. We are closing down our organization.
Something for you to do, Maggie.
Maggie, there's one thing that I forgot to do, and that's mention your opponent that you may be running against. I happened to been the UnderSheriff at that time, and he and I locked horns every day. If you ever seen black and white, you've seen us. And this guy, the worst thing about him, he's an attorney. And attorneys are getting, how many dollars? $347 or something like that an hour is their average. How many people do you know that is worth that much money? Glad to hear it.
We can't.
No, you.
No, but when I graduated from Stanford Law School, I decided I was too honest to be a lawyer, but just dishonest enough.
There you go.
Dishonest enough to be a spy, so I joined the CIA.
CIA is not one of my favorites either.
I lose.
So you hit it in both times. But they do some good, I guess. I don't know what it is. But anyway, I think that Maggie's got a good chance to do it. I think there's a lot of people who remember Ron Richards, and there's a lot of people that also lock horns with him daily. And so I think that you've got a good hand in Beaver working with you, and you're working with her. And so,
Who's going to step up to do Hargrove's
I think
seat?
it'll go. Anyway, that's the hot thing for the local area.
Who's going to step up and take Hargrove's seat?
Pardon?
Who's going to step up and run for Hargrove's seat?
Boy, I don't know. That's, I have no idea on that. But it'll be one of our two representatives, I can tell you that. And which one it is, I don't know. But it will be one of our two representatives. Does that answer your question on what my...
That'll make that seat available, baby.
Okay. For you. All right. How about the staff reports? You want to tell us how much money we got?
$449.11 in the pot.
Very good. That's why we haven't passed the jar, because we're rich. Anything else? And the exchequer, and you've already talked, Larry, so you've got the floor. You want it again? Nope. Okay, it's a good answer. Mark?
Well, this is a minor thing, but I think that most of you remember when we had our local newspaper publisher as a speaker.
Yes.
And I told him that I'd stop writing letters for the newspaper because I got sick and tired of arguing with Paul Gottlieb.
Right.
I think he had a talk with Paul Gottlieb, and what Gottlieb does now, instead of arguing with you, is he just throws away the one he doesn't like. I'm not writing letters for the editor anymore.
Well, that's bad, because I quit writing them because of Gottlieb, that you did too.
Yeah.
Just, that means Gottlieb won.
The last 3 letters I've sent in, one of them got published, the other 2 disappeared.
Well, I hope some of the new people start writing letters in, getting rid of the old hands like you.
Well, I think what you need to do is find out, Gottlieb doesn't supervise the letters all the time. If you could get a spy at the newspaper to tell you when he's on duty, don't send your letter in then. But that's the whole thing I can say.
You know, you don't have that problem if you write to the Sequim Gazette. I wrote a letter to the editor and got it published within 3 days.
Really?
No questions asked.
Well, on that point, when we put the opposition to the Sequim bond issue, the letters that went to the Gazette also got published in the PDF. Must have been a slow day.
Okay. If there is nothing from the floor, that completes the meeting, and I'm sorry it takes so long, but we've got a lot of good information, and thank you very much for being here. That's all.
Disasters, to teach people. We have things called Map Your Neighborhood, which I'll talk a little bit about later. We have what's called the CERT training, and all these things are available to those that want to volunteer and help us in times of disaster. So some of the disasters that we would deal with are what we usually see, you know, storms, flooding, maybe snow. Sometimes there are man-made disasters. Many of us were around when we had the oil spill. That was an EOC function, all those things. And those are the things we try to stand up and respond to help with the dispatch of all the different responding agencies. But I guess what's been on everybody's mind and what we're preparing for now is what I call the Cascadia RIP. And I got that from a book I read. It's called Cascadia RIP 9.0 or something. Very good book if you ever get a chance to read it. But it kind of explains everything. And just a little bit of history. You know, scientists have discovered through looking at the beaches out on the coast and stuff that these earthquakes, these major earthquakes happen in our area because of this Cascadia subduction zone that exists off our coast. And it starts somewhere around Northern California and it goes all the way up around through Vancouver Island. And I don't know how far offshore it is, but it's a couple of plates that come together, and I'm no geologist or anything like that, but apparently what happens is that they start squeezing themselves together. And in geographical time, it's probably not long, but to us it could be hundreds, if not 1,000 years. But the pressure builds and builds and builds until bang, it lets go. And when it lets go, it moves. And that starts a shake. And it's a violent shake. And that's where an earthquake of 9.0 proportion happens. I mean, we're talking things like happened in Alaska in '64, that happened down in Indonesia, that happened in Japan, what was that, 2010? That's what's going to happen. And it will shake violently for 5 minutes, and it's going to seem forever. How many
And so we're here, and sorry about the cancel, but I talked to the Republicans, and I said, you're forgiven. And so that's the first time we've ever canceled a meeting for this organization, and as I was mentioning through our guest speaker, we've been around for 24 years. That's a long time. I'll miss you guys. In case that you've not seen it, the $30 tab is added again. are coming around, and every time we pass it, the people down in Olympia say no. And the best way that you can control those people is through the vote. So I want to pass this around and let you sign it. And there's any questions that you have, there's a newspaper part about it so that you can read it if you were unfamiliar with it. So let's start it here. One thing that I've noticed out on the tree farm is that the spring is coming early this year. Everything is warm and blossoms all over the red bud and the Cascadia. And the trees are beginning to get a little bud on them. The alder is turning red. And to me, it's probably about a month early. And I don't know exactly why, but I'll tell you what, it's a welcome thing to have that done. One of the things that we need to talk about is some of the problems that we mentioned earlier. Yeah, that is the spring and the summer, and sometimes you get out in the woods, tourists get out there and they fall down and somebody has to rescue them. They get lost. Hunting season, everybody gets lost during the hunting season. Well, the good thing about that is all the old growth is all cut off. But we have the guy here who runs it, and that's the UnderSheriff. And the guy that's responsible for it is the sheriff. But he's the lake man. He's the guy that's the duck sitting on the water with meters going miles an hour and everything up on top, not moving. So I think that's the best way to describe his job. And he's going to tell us all about it, and we would like for you to stay for a business meeting, which will take about 10 minutes, and we usually just have a few questions and comments, so you may have some interest there too. And following that, then we will go into the rest of our business meeting. So with that, Ron Zucker, of course, is the, as I said, is the UnderSheriff. A real important job, having said in that sequence on the time. I found that it was very interesting, and one of the things about Ron is that he has a tremendous amount of experience, and he's not wet behind the ears, and that helps in that kind of a job. We were just chatting about one of the events that have occurred in the county, and it was kind of a tragedy, but I was glad to hear him say what he said, because it explained to me why the verdict was the way it was. So with that, Ron, you've got the floor as long as you want it.
Sure. First of all, I'm Ron Cameron, Ron Zucker, directs the jail. Ron Peregrine retired, to get all that straight. We had all the Rons out there. It was easy for Sheriff Benedict to blame something on something. Put that sign out in the hallway with our names up there, and I said, yeah, that's pretty cool, Bill. And he said, you don't understand, when I go down, you're all coming with me. So that's what I did. But I want to thank Don and all of you for having me here today, especially since you got me out of tripping on Silverville. I had to save you a whole bunch of money, so I appreciate all that. It's good to see friends like Beaver and Maggie and Jim, Bishop. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. So about a year ago, I mentioned Ron Peregrine. Just an excellent person all the way around. He was our UnderSheriff, and he had been there for quite some time. And
so you don't get lost. For those of you who have enjoyed hunting out on the west end and the old growth, you get into that, and the canopy above you, you're lost. If you don't know what direction you're going in, just follow a stream. But it seems like that most hunters don't seem to realize that. And I remember several times that we've been out looking for hunters and one of them was a death, if you remember, and you were a part of that search. And that's good because we've always been able to find them, pick them up, and get them back. So I think the granddaddy of everything that we are concerned with is the fact that we're right on a fault. And I mentioned this earlier in one of our meetings, but there's nothing like sitting on an earthquake fault, because we are also subject to a tsunami. And if these things occur, I'll tell you what, we're going to be in some pretty tight spots. For instance, it'll probably take 6 weeks before we can have communications over land. Of course, the air, they can come in, but you never know where it's going to be. And with that comes a tsunami. And I know that's hard for most people to pronounce, but it's Japanese. T-S-A-M-E is the way that it reads. And I know in Japan, I had the hardest time figuring out how to say it. It's just not in our language. But then we got even with them. They can't pronounce the B's. And so they replace it with an R. And the great sport was to get the Japanese entertainer to sing, I'm in love with you, they would say. Yeah. Because they would always replace it with an R. But I don't know how we got onto that, but it's interesting. So let's talk about what would happen and how it's controlled. Most people don't really know how many hours are put into search and rescue and into the emergency.
He had been there for quite some time, but he finally decided at 70 he was ready to pull the pin. And so he retired, and I moved from the chief criminal deputy slot into the undersheriff's position. I kind of thought, this should be a breeze. Like Don said, I've been in law enforcement since 1979, and boy, I tell you what, one of the jobs that came with being an undersheriff was the emergency manager, and that was a whole new ballgame. You know, for years, I predicated my entire career on interagency cooperation, working with Port Angeles Police and SQUIM and Washington State Patrol and all these different law enforcement agencies. And I enjoyed that. You know, this is a small area, none of us can get it done alone. And so we all got together, and people around the state were envious on how we were able to work together on all these law enforcement agencies. But now, this emergency management thing, it's huge. It's not just law enforcement agencies, it's fire departments, it's ambulance services, it's the hospital, it's PUD, I can go on, roads, public works, on it goes. And we've got to get all these entities together when it comes time to face a disaster so we can organize a response to help put things back together. And of course, that ain't going to happen overnight, but if we can make it organized, at least we can be productive, save lives, help people, and put all those things together. So let's talk about emergency management. What do we do? Well, I have two wonderful employees that are emergency management coordinators who have forgotten more about emergency management than I probably will ever know. I would have loved to have had them here today for you, but I had them in school all week, and I didn't want to bother their week. But they are excellent. Not only they're excellent at what they know, they're excellent volunteer managers, because this is so big. We have almost 100 volunteers from throughout the county that help us with things like the Emergency Operations Center, where we dispatch different area entities to respond to these various